My name is Matt Sharp-Cheney, and as mentioned, I'm a Resource Management Specialist 2 with the Natural Resources Department at Midpen, and I'm the mammal lead for the district. As such, my focuses include special status species mammals, including rare bats, San Francisco dusky-footed wood rat, and of course, mountain lions. So the purpose of today's session is to offer information to the board that defines the role that Midpen plays in conserving mountain lions in our region. Today's study session will focus on mountain lion ecology and the essential roles that mountain lions play in the Santa Cruz Mountains and beyond. The many threats that mountain lions have faced and are currently facing, lion legal status, and Midpen's work to preserve habitat, support habitat connectivity, manage human mountain lion conflict, and support groundbreaking mountain lion research that helps guide management decisions that support lion conservation while striving to minimize risks to public safety. And finally, we will also discuss 2 upcoming projects that will help us to understand how mountain lion habitat use relates to human activity in areas with high levels of human and lion interaction. So let's start with some basic background on mountain lions themselves, an iconic species that goes by many different names. So during the course of this presentation, you'll hear me refer to them as mountain lions, cougars, and pumas. They also go by names like catamount, ghost cat, panther, and mountain screamer. And their scientific or Latin name is Puma concolor, which roughly translates into lion or cat of one color, which references that uniform coloration on the fur that you can see with this beautiful photo of an adult lion out at Russian Ridge. So how do you know if you're looking at a mountain lion? One of the key features to look for is that thick 2.5 to 3 foot long black tipped tail that is long enough to touch the ground. There aren't any other species in our region that have a tail that comes close to that. Again, they've got that uniform color. Another thing to note is there's sort of a dark mustache around the muzzle of mountain lions, and those hips that rest much higher than the shoulders, really showing off their pouncing capabilities. So this is an informational graphic on how large a mountain lion is compared to other species that we have in the area, including bobcats, domestic cats, and us, humans. Adult females can get up to 85 to 115 pounds, whereas adult males can be quite a bit larger at 120 to 160 pounds. And when I talk to people on the phone that have observed mountain lions, they often tell me that it looks like they're about the size of a large German Shepherd. So that's a good indication. A little bit about mountain lion life history. So earlier I mentioned that they usually have a uniform coloration on their fur. Well, when they're young, like this mountain lion kitten, with beautiful blue eyes and spotted pelt, they actually have a pretty distinct pattern. So this actually helps for these young lions to remain safe while their mothers venture out for multiple days at a time on occasion to make sure that they have enough food to provide milk for their young while they're defenseless. So female mountain lions at about 2 to 3 years of age will give birth to 1 to 4 spotted kittens. And the mother lion will stick with these young for about 12 to 16 months. At that point, young will disperse and males will try to seek out new territory away from the territory of the father mountain lion. Whereas females will often take some of their mother's territory and adjoining female territories. Male territories can be as high as 90 square miles in range, whereas female territories can be as large as 30 square miles. And the amount of territory the lion takes will definitely vary depending on habitat characteristics and how much territory is available and how much is occupied by other potentially more dominant males. Lions can live up to 8 to 10 years in the wild, but we'll talk about some considerable threats that they face that lead to many lions not surviving nearly as long. Now, if you're like me and you grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, you might have expected that you would run into a mountain lion at some point. And that's really generally not the case. They're very reclusive animals, and they generally do their best to avoid people. So with the exception of some research work that I've done, I've never in my personal life encountered a mountain lion out and about. But what I do see very often while I'm on district preserves are signs of mountain lion activity, including the tracks that we see in this photo here. So if you keep your eyes peeled and know what to look for, you'll start to notice that, you know, lions are actually very prevalent on the landscape in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but they're just very good at keeping away from people. Another indication that mountain lions are in an area are the scrapes and scat that they'll leave behind. Scrapes play a really important role in communication between mountain lions. Because they're so highly territorial and want to avoid coming in direct contact with rival males, they use these locations and scrapes as a way of communicating to other males and also other females that they are around. And females will come and investigate these scrapes to learn information about how fit a male is while they're choosing which male they want to breed with. Their scat is quite large, 6 to 15 inches long. It's usually segmented with blunt ends, but they're sometimes tapered. And they often have hair and bone and even deer hooves present in the scat. So they create these scrapes by digging with their back paws and then urinating and defecating onto the soil mound. Both male and female lions do create scrapes, but male lions do so more frequently, whereas the female lions spend more time investigating scrapes than male lions do. Mountain lions are incredible hunters. They've got these 4-inch retractable claws, incredibly powerful jaws with those canine teeth that you can see, and they're more than capable when it comes to grappling with and subduing large-bodied animals, including our local Colombian black-tailed deer. So they are apex predators, and they perform very essential ecological roles by regulating those deer populations. And they're usually out hunting at dawn and dusk and utilizing an ambush tactic to capture prey. So one of the things that we often tell people is to avoid going out and hiking at dawn and dusk if you want to minimize your chance of encountering a mountain lion. Some more information about the physical prowess of mountain lions. They can reach speeds of up to 50 miles per hour in a sprint. They can jump up to 15 feet high. So your standard deer fence is not going to keep a mountain lion out. And they can jump about 32 feet horizontally, which is about the width of a 2-lane road. So this impressive physical prowess of mountain lions relates directly to the prey that they most often eat. And if you've ever seen our local Colombian black-tailed deer bounding through a field, you know that they are rather physically impressive in their own right. Mountain lions are able to leap from cover and quickly dispatch a large-bodied deer, which sometimes have dangerous antlers as an added defense. The adaptations we looked at earlier help us to understand how they can accomplish this. Lions are obligate carnivores, meaning that they rely on meat to survive. And their primary food source is deer, but they will also eat coyotes, foxes, wild boar, turkey, rodents, and occasionally domestic animals, including pets and livestock. An adult lion can survive on about 1 adult deer per week. And recent research has shown that lions will select smaller prey in areas with high levels of human activity and will actually shift their diet away from deer to smaller wildlife like raccoons, ground squirrels, and even rodents. This is because lions typically try to avoid humans and will even abandon prey if they are disturbed by human activity. Smaller prey takes less time to consume, so there's less likelihood that they will lose their meal. Now let's take a look at some of the ecological roles that mountain lions play. Adult lions will again eat around 1 deer per week or 52 deer per year. And this regulates deer populations and reduces herbivory by limiting the number of deer on the landscape. This predator-prey dynamic is balanced by the deer population's influence on lions. When fewer deer are available, lions are less able to feed themselves, and their young and and their survival rate can drop. Lions also support ecosystem diversity by creating important food sources for scavengers that feed on the deer and other animal carcasses that lions create. In our region, lion kills support a variety of insects, as well as skunks, coyotes, and even golden eagles. Decomposing lion kills also add nutrients to the soil and improve soil health. Lions also play a role in regulating the prevalence of Lyme disease in a few important ways. When ticks reach their adult phase, they rely more on large mammals, including deer. Since lions regulate the deer populations, fewer adult ticks are supported, and therefore there are fewer ticks in the area. Lions also have an impact on how other wildlife moves. So when lions are present in a landscape, other animals tend to have smaller home ranges to avoid the potential of being eaten by that lion. This limits their exposure to ticks by keeping some wildlife from venturing out over larger areas where they're likely to encounter more ticks. Now that we've got some information about mountain lions and their role in the local ecology, let's move on to some background on Midpen. So what I want to highlight here is our mission statement, which is acquiring a regional greenbelt of open space and preserving that in perpetuity. And that plays a really essential role when we're thinking about large carnivores with wide ranges like mountain lions. As we'll see earlier, some of the key threats that mountain lions face are in habitat loss and habitat fragmentation. Now, I also want to point out that on the San Mateo County coast, we have a second, perhaps lesser known mission statement, which was adopted in 2004 when we expanded our boundaries into coastal San Mateo County. And this mission statement includes preservation of viable agricultural land use in the region. Since then, we have been able to protect an additional 11,000 acres of open space in perpetuity. And to date, Midpen preserves over 65,000 acres of habitat that helps support wide-ranging wildlife, including mountain lions. Midpen also has a variety of board-approved policies that direct our management actions on the landscape. Among these is the wildlife management policy shown here. The goal of this policy is to promote healthy and diverse native wildlife. And this goal is supported by specific policies listed below and relate to the district's mountain lion conservation efforts, which include funding and support of ongoing lion research, preservation of lion habitat, increasing habitat connectivity, reducing conflicts between humans and lions, public outreach and education about lions, supporting legislation that regulates rodenticide use, and advocating for further legal protections for vulnerable mountain lion populations. So next, I'd like to talk a bit about the threats that exist to mountain lions. And I wanted to start by looking at the range map of mountain lions, because this really highlights a few key and important things about mountain lions themselves. Number one, they actually have one of the greatest distributions of any existing land mammal in the Americas, but they are notably absent from the East Coast of the United States and Canada, where they used to be present. This is because they were persecuted over hundreds of years and hunted to localized extinction. So with the exception of the small population of endangered Florida panthers that we see on the East Coast in Florida, they have been removed entirely from the East Coast. And this has resulted in some significant issues where there are larger deer populations, which can lead to more car accidents, additional herbivory, and a greater prevalence of that Lyme disease that we discussed earlier. So this chart highlights some of the threats that lions have faced, but it also showcases how adaptive they are. So they're able to survive in conditions like the high Andes, the Amazon rainforest, and the Arctic tundra of the Yukon in Western Canada. So these animals can make a living in many, many different habitat types. So let's look at some other factors that influence the population size of mountain lions. which we've broken down here into human factors and biological factors. One is depredation and poaching. So depredation is the lethal removal of a predator through a permit in response to loss of domestic pet or livestock. And poaching is illegally hunting a predator, like a mountain lion. Roadkill is a very significant issue in our region. Habitat loss, genetic isolation from fragmentation of habitat, from urban expansion and the construction of roads and highways, the use of rodenticides, which bioaccumulate up into apex predators like mountain lions, and biological factors including disease, infanticide, which is where an adult lion will actually kill its offspring. That's usually a male mountain lion killing a young male. Territorial disputes in which rival males can battle and may result in the death of one mountain lion. And then of course that prey availability, which we referenced earlier with that predator-prey dynamic between mountain lions and deer. Road mortalities and depredation are the leading causes of lion mortality in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So this graphic here shows the number of lions killed by roadkill and by depredation. And I want to point out that in 2017, there were 19 lions killed by those combined factors. And I'd like you to try and remember that number 19, and I'll bring it up again, when we talk about our known estimates for lion populations in the area, because it turns out that that is a very significant number. So we worked with Pathways for Wildlife and the UCSC Puma Project to identify a local regional roadkill hotspot right next to Lexington Reservoir between El Sereno and Sierra Azul. So the map that we see on the right here highlights between 2000 and 2017 the number of animals that were hit along Highway 17. And this represents a threat, of course, to the animals themselves, but also to commuters on Highway 17 that can be injured when striking an animal. The red stars that we see on this map show areas where mountain lions were hit and killed during this time frame. And our work with collared mountain lions that have GPS accelerometers affixed to them showed that there were multiple attempts to cross this location shown with the purple dashed line. So this is definitely a location that animals are trying to cross in, and sometimes succeeding and many times failing. And they will continue to try and cross here into the future. So this may be a familiar image to those with an interest in mountain lions. This is the iconic lion of Griffith Park in Los Angeles, known as P22. And believe it or not, the image on the left and the right are of the same animal. So this showcases the negative effects of exposure to what are known as second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, or SCARs. These SCARs are an issue for many species of wildlife and tend to bioaccumulate up the food chain and make their way into predator species like lions, bobcats, and coyotes. What we see on the left are the effects of scarcoptic mange, which is caused by an infestation of mites, which feed on the host's skin. Now, rodenticides don't directly cause this condition, but they do weaken the immune system of exposed lions, making them more susceptible to it. And unfortunately, of the lions that have been necropsied in the state by Calfish and Wildlife, over 90% have come back with these SCAR rodenticides in their system. So this is an ongoing issue. Now we'll talk a bit about the legal status of mountain lions in the state, which has a very long and interesting history. So from 1907 to 1963, mountain lions were actually a bountied predator, meaning that the state would pay people to go out and hunt and remove mountain lions. This is why their numbers dropped drastically. And this was not just in California, but across the United States and for many more years, which has led to that lack of lions on the East Coast. In 1963, they were designated as a non-game mammal, meaning they could not be hunted. And then quickly in 1969, they became a game mammal again. And in 1990, California voters passed Proposition 117, which labeled mountain lions as a specially protected mammal and kept them from being hunted by a hunting license. After this proposition was passed, mountain lions were still able to be taken under depredation permits if livestock or pets were confirmed to have been taken by a mountain lion. Now in 2017, Cal Fish and Wildlife offered further protections for mountain lions in 2 areas in the Santa Ana and Santa Monica Mountains, where the populations were experiencing severe fragmentation and genetic depression. The way that they protected them was by making those depredation permits more difficult to obtain and requiring that any livestock or pets that were at risk were being protected by the owner of those livestock or pets. And in 2020, just this last April, mountain lions were listed as a candidate species under the California Endangered Species Act, or CISA. Now let's talk a bit about what we know and don't know about the statewide population of mountain lions. Cal Fish and Wildlife has a current estimate of 4,000 to 6,000 mountain lions throughout the state. But they are very careful to point out that this estimate is based on incomplete data. And I'm happy to report that they are working on a robust genetic research project that Midpen participated in, which utilized conservation canines, so dogs that are specially trained, to sniff out mountain lion scat. And then they were able to get DNA material from this scat, and they're using that to estimate the number of lions across the state in multiple populations. We expect to have results in the next couple of years from that effort. But in the meantime, I'd like to point out the chart that we have here, which shows some research that used genetics to estimate the population in different locations throughout the state by Gustafsson et al. In 2018. And we see that in our region, the Central Coast North, which includes Santa Cruz Mountains and the East Bay, our total adult population is estimated at 33 to 66 individual adults. So again, I'll bring up that 19 individuals that were killed in 2017 by depredation and roadkill incidents. And now that you have the context of how many lions we think there are in the region, we can see that that's very significant. Now let's look at the current estimates of the affected population size of mountain lions in the 6 at-risk populations that we discussed in the last slide. The affected population size is a metric that looks at the genetic diversity of a population. It is an estimate of the number of individuals in a theoretical, idealized population where lions are able to breed with other lions freely. And this theoretical population has the same genetic diversity as the studied actual population. So the more fragmented and genetically depressed a population is, the lower its affected population will be in comparison to the actual number of individuals. So remember that in the Central Coast North population, which includes the Santa Cruz Mountains and East Bay Hills, the estimate for adult lions was 33 to 66 individuals. And we see here that the effective population size for this same population is only 16.6. Geneticists believe that an effective population size of 50 or more is needed to avoid the risk of suffering from poor genetic diversity. With the exception of the Central Coast Central population shown in this chart, all 6 of the populations shown here do not meet that threshold. Populations with poor genetic diversity suffer from poor fitness and are at greater risk from threats like disease, inbreeding, drought, fire, and climate change. This makes these populations more likely to experience localized extinction. Each of the colors on this map represent one of the 10 distinct lion populations in California. The darker the color, the more genetically distinct that lion population is. The gradient in the color shows intergrades between these populations. This map also shows the location of the evolutionary significant unit where mountain lions have recently been designated as a candidate species for the Endangered Species Act. So you can see that that dark outline stretches from the Santa Cruz Mountains with that black coloration right near the bay, all the way down into Southern California along the coast. So at this point, mountain lions are in a one-year review period in which the Fish and Game Commission will be gathering as much detailed information and scientific research on the mountain lion populations across the state as possible. And they'll use that information to make their final determination. In the meantime, mountain lions are protected as though they were listed as threatened in the state within that ESU. Now let's talk about Midpen's mountain lion conservation efforts, which include habitat preservation, increased habitat connectivity, legislation and support of the listing evaluation, human mountain lion conflict management, and research. Now I'd like to direct your attention to this really interesting graphic that was created by Justin Dillinger, who's the head mountain lion expert for Cal Fish and Wildlife. So what we see here is a map of probability of use by mountain lions throughout the state. So this corresponds with how good the habitat quality is for mountain lions. The darker the color, the more suitable the habitat is for lions. As we can see here, the Santa Cruz Mountains contain really excellent mountain lion habitat. And the map on the right shows our system of preserves in dark green and dark brown, as well as other preserved lands in light green that make up that regional greenbelt of open space lands that we discussed earlier. The other thing that we'll notice here is that while the Santa Cruz Mountains have some great lion habitat, they're surrounded by some not so great lion habitat, with the Silicon Valley to the east, the San Francisco Bay to the north, and the Pacific Ocean to the west. To try and address this issue of fragmented habitat and inability for mountain lions in our region to exchange genetic material with other populations, the district is working to create a Highway 17 wildlife and regional trail crossing. So my colleague, Julie Anderson, has been working on this project for some time. And you'll see in the map here that there are points 1 and 2, which have been designated as potential wildlife only crossing locations. These include Ravine Creek and Trout Creek. And these correspond very well with that map that we saw earlier where wildlife is already trying to cross. They both have very steep and unstable slopes and are not feasible for public access trails, but they provide a really good opportunity for wildlife crossings. And it's actually good that we have an opportunity here to have public access trails and wildlife crossing trails separate, because wildlife will be more inclined to use a trail that is not frequented by people. The Highway 17 Wildlife and Regional Trail Crossing Project will improve connectivity between the northern and southern portions of the Santa Cruz Mountains and facilitate genetic exchange between the Santa Cruz mountain lion population and adjoining populations in the Gabilan and Hamilton ranges. Now let's talk a bit about work that Midpen has done to support legislation that helps conserve mountain lions. In 1996, we opposed the repeal of Proposition 117, which would have allowed for hunting of mountain lions again. In 2014, we supported Assembly Bill 2657, which restricted the use of those second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides that we saw as being responsible for P22's appearance in that past photo. And this made those scars unavailable for public use, but they are still available for use by pest control companies. We also wrote a letter of support to the Cal Fish and Game Commission for that evaluation of listing mountain lions under CISA and joined as co-signatories on other letters. We are currently providing information to support Cal Assembly Bill 1788, which would ban the use of scars in California entirely. And just recently, on July 2nd, we joined as co-signatories in opposition to Assembly Bill 245, which would allow for the take of species or hunting of species that are under evaluation for listing under CISA. And that currently includes mountain lions that are in that one-year review period. Another way that we work to conserve mountain lions is through policy. So we are currently conducting a public process to update our conservation grazing policy in order to proactively reduce predator and livestock conflicts in our open space preserves and beyond. We're doing this by using the best available science and input from stakeholders as well as the public to meet the goals of promoting the economic sustainability of our conservation grazing program while safeguarding native plants and wildlife in areas where predation of livestock may occur. And again, this relates directly to our second mission statement on the San Mateo County coast. And I also want to point out the purpose of our conservation grazing program is to enhance grassland habitat that supports many rare species of wildlife and plants, including species that are threatened or endangered, like the California red-legged frog and the San Francisco garter snake. So we are evaluating non-lethal tools to reduce conflict. Midpen has never allowed for the lethal removal of a predator in response to a loss of livestock, and we have committed to continuing that practice into the future. The draft language for this policy amendment also includes language to that effect. And what we see in this photo here are two examples of non-lethal tools to reduce conflict. And these were placed around a calving pasture out at Mindigo Ranch in Russian Ridge Open Space Preserve. So that yellow device that you see is a fox light, which emits a strobe light at random intervals at night and makes predators wary of that area and less likely to enter the pasture. And then the fladry, which are those pin flags affixed to the bottom of that fence, also keep predators from feeling comfortable about crossing that barrier. Now, reducing this conflict is not only protective of our conservation grazing program, it also helps to protect native predators. For example, from 2008 to 2018, from depredation data obtained in areas that include the entirety of the Santa Cruz Mountains, so San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz counties, a total of 42 mountain lions were legally, lethally taken under depredation permits, and 133 permits were issued. That means there were 133 instances of mountain lions taking a domestic animal where Cal Fish and Wildlife came and issued a permit. So we know that legal depredation is actually one of the leading causes of lion mortality in our region, according to Chris Wolmers from the UCSC Puma Project. And unfortunately, we are also aware that poaching is a problem in response to conflict. We know that even here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, there are people that will poach mountain lions without a permit in response to loss of livestock. So we have been working with a wildlife conflict specialist, Veronica Jovovich, to develop a comprehensive literature review that detailed several non-lethal wildlife livestock protection measures, which are shown in the chart below. Now, our proposed policy amendment would include a scientific evaluation of these measures to determine their effectiveness, as well as the effects on non-target wildlife. If these measures can be shown to reduce conflicts, then they may be useful to other ranchers in the region and beyond, and can help protect wildlife like mountain lions by reducing conflicts. Now let's look at how Midpen is addressing public safety and the safety of mountain lions. California has a population of roughly 39 million people. This, coupled with continued habitat loss and fragmentation, means that there are more chances for human and lion interactions. Sometimes these interactions result in a conflict that can put human health and/or property at risk. These conflicts also negatively impact mountain lions by placing them at risk of being lethally removed to protect public safety or property such as pets and livestock. Since 2017, Midpen has held annual Mountain Lion Awareness Week events at Rancho San Antonio to raise awareness of lion activity at our most visited preserve, where lion interactions with the public are most frequent. We also provide informational signage at trailheads. So anybody that's hiked on our preserves is probably familiar with this sign. And I assume that most people know what to do if they see a lion, but it's always worth reiterating. You want to face the lion, back away slowly, absolutely do not run. You want to make a lot of noise. You want to be large and shout. Keep your children close by and pick them up without bending down. And if attacked, fight back. Now, making all that noise and making yourself seem threatening is a good way to protect yourself if a lion's interested in you. It's also a really good way to reinforce that normal behavior of mountain lions to try and stay away from people. Midpen also maintains a webpage dedicated to mountain lion information, including a map of lion observations at Rancho San Antonio that is updated monthly. We also work with neighboring property managers to respond to lion activity. In the past, we've worked with Hidden Villa after livestock losses to mountain lions occurred, and recommended secure pens and night penning of livestock to protect them from lions. And since then, to my knowledge, they have not had any additional issues. And our own Deer Hollow Farm, which operates in Rancho San Antonio, has also been successful at keeping their livestock safe from predators by penning them at night. On May 28th, we hosted a virtual live event titled Coexisting with Cougars. That's me in my kitchen, where I am right now, actually, giving this talk. And I'm happy to report that that event had over 380 attendees, and as of the writing of this presentation, over 680 views on YouTube. So Midpen employs an adaptive management strategy to protect public safety. And to do this, what we do is when someone reports a mountain lion observation, our wildlife team will interview them and get details about the behavior of the lion, as well as the actions that people observing the lion took. So we want to get as much information as possible about what was the lion doing, what did the person do in response to what the lion was doing, and how did the lion respond to that person's response. With this information, we designate the type of observation into 5 categories. A sighting, where a lion is seen fleeing from humans. A recurrent sighting, where lions are observed in the same area repeatedly. An encounter, where a lion is observed from an unsafe distance and may display unsafe behavior. An incident, where a lion is acting in a threatening manner towards humans or domestic animals. Or in the most severe and luckily most rare cases, an attack on a human. Each observation type warrants a different response that can range from closing single trails, closing entire preserves, or in the case of an attack, working with Cowfish and Wildlife to capture the offending animal. This map shows a trail closure in response to mountain lion activity at Rancho San Antonio. Under our wildlife response protocols, if a lion is exhibiting unacceptable behavior that may represent a threat to the public safety, we may close trails for a week and then evaluate the situation before reopening or closing for an additional week. Lions may exhibit defensive behavior if they have a kill or young stashed nearby. This 1 to 2 week trail closure may give the lion a chance to consume a kill. Remember, it takes about a week for a lion to eat an adult deer, or move young to another den. But trail closures aren't the only way we've responded to lion activity. We also change preserve hours to keep people from recreating in lion territory in non-daylight hours when lions are more active. Have held educational and outreach events, have coordinated with Cowfish and Wildlife, who we contact whenever there is concerning wildlife activity, and use trail cameras to monitor lion activity. So this map showcases different events that led to the closure of trails or the entire preserve at Rancho San Antonio. But what I'd really like to talk about with this is some of the unique features of Rancho San Antonio itself. First and foremost, this is our busiest preserve by far, and it is visited by over 700,000 people a year. We average around 1 mountain lion sighting per month. You can see those gray dots. Those are observations from March to February of 1 year from 2019 to 2020, as well as the yellow and purple dots. More observations than any other preserve. Now, Rancho is bordered by neighborhoods to the north and east, as well as the Lehigh Permanente Quarry to the south, which effectively creates a peninsula of suitable lion habitat. And in addition, we know that prey is relatively abundant at Rancho, which may draw lions to the preserve. This map, created by one of our GIS technicians, Rachel Poo, showcases how many more observations we've had of mountain lions at Rancho San Antonio as compared to our other preserves, which is at an order of magnitude higher, with 131 observations by members of the public and staff. And this does not include trail camera observations, only in-person observations, between 2010 and 2020. The next closest preserve is Russian Ridge with 30 observations, and a majority of our preserves have less than 10 observations. Now I want to turn our attention to the rare instances of attacks on people by mountain lions. Fish and Wildlife has kept detailed data on lion attacks and has done a really great job of verifying attacks since 1986. So since 1986, we have a total of 17 confirmed attacks from mountain lions on people. And of these, only 3 attacks have been fatal for humans. And I also want to point out that the majority of these attacks ended up with a fatality for the mountain lion responsible in the interest of public safety. Shown in the black boxes here are 2 instances of attacks on people that actually occurred on Midpen preserves. One in 2014 at Picchetti Ranch with a 6-year-old boy, and another in February, on February 16th of 2020 at Rancho San Antonio with a 6-year-old girl. So as a wildlife management specialist, the last thing that I want to see is an attack on a person by wildlife. And this is the kind of thing that, keeps you up at night thinking about. But we do have protocols in place to respond appropriately when these instances do occur. So I would like to offer some information about the attack on February 16th. Firstly, there were no recurrent sightings before the attack. We had 1 sighting a week before at a completely different trail where a lion was exhibiting totally normal behavior and left the trail as soon as the observer saw the lion. During this incident, a 6-year-old girl was injured by a mountain lion while she was hiking with her parents and siblings. The mountain lion injured the girl's calf by reaching out and clawing at her leg. There were high levels of human traffic on the trail. Actually, a group of 20 runners had gone by the same location where the attack occurred just moments before. The parents were close with the children when the attack occurred, which was a really good thing because one of the adults was able to actually push back the mountain lion and drive off the attack. And I want to take a moment and commend our ranger staff as well as Fish and Wildlife for their swift and effective response to this incident. Fish and Wildlife took DNA, a DNA sample from the wound on the attack victim and was able to actually compare it to DNA from the mountain lion that was captured after 3 days of effort. They used that DNA analysis to actually match up the DNA from the wound to the DNA of the animal itself and confirm that it was the same animal before euthanizing the lion humanely. We also had the Puma Project on site and ready to collar the mountain lion if it ended up not being the lion responsible for the attack, so we could get some useful information about how lions are using the habitat at Rancho. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about why relocation is not really an option in these instances. And first and foremost, it's because there's a continued public safety risk. If a mountain lion has attacked a person, it's shown that it's willing to do so. There's not really anywhere in the state that you can relocate a mountain lion where it won't have an opportunity to do so again. Also, lions will try very hard to get back into their territory. And Cal Fish and Wildlife does relocate mountain lions if they end up in urban areas, like just recently happened in San Francisco a few weeks ago. And they will actually collar these lions to see what happens to them afterwards. And unfortunately, we've found that they really only survive an average of about 5 months after release. And they're either killed by another lion if they're dropped into a dominant male's territory, or they're killed crossing roads trying to get back to the area that they were taken from. So as a case study on that, we'll talk a bit about that young male mountain lion that was found in San Francisco. So this lion was spotted and captured in Oracle Park on June 18th, 2020. And it had actually been seen for several days by many people that got camera and cell phone footage. May have even stopped at the San Francisco Zoo to snack on a couple marsupials. And it was believed to be an orphan young male whose mother was killed by a vehicle strike. Cal Fish and Wildlife relocated the lion near the Crystal Springs Reservoir. And unfortunately, it turned up dead after being hit by a vehicle on July 3rd, 2020. So this showcases how rough of a world it is out there for mountain lions, and also points out how relocation is not always successful. So we've also worked quite a bit to support research in our region. And we've worked with organizations like the Puma Project, Cal Fish and Wildlife, and the Bay Area Puma Project, or Philaday, which has helped us to better understand lion behavior, ecology, movement, and population dynamics. Here we see a mountain lion with an accelerometer and GPS collar. We've worked with the Santa Cruz Puma Project for over 10 years and have supported them by providing grants, permitting access to preserves for lion research, and collaborating on projects to protect mountain lions like the Highway 17 Wildlife Crossing Project. Some important research findings that I've actually mentioned during this talk include the finding of carnivores increasing their kill rates on prey as a response to human-induced fear and going after those smaller animals. That role of scent marking and mate selection by female pumas. And then mesopredators, which include coyotes and bobcats, just other smaller predators, and how they react and move differently in response to large predators, as well as development in the Santa Cruz Mountains. These are just some of many of the findings that came from the Puma Project research. All right, and then we'll talk a little bit about some future opportunities that the district has to continue to support mountain lions in the region. And two in particular, one being a wildlife photo index project at Rancho San Antonio, and another being a human mountain lion interaction study and management plan that we are considering and will be up for consideration by the board for award of contract on July 22nd. So Midpen maintains and manages our own suite of wildlife cameras and also allows outside researchers to utilize wildlife cameras through permits with the district. This map of El Sereno, Sierra Azul, and Bear Creek Redwood shows the location of many of the cameras we already have or have had out on the landscape in these areas. Wildlife cameras can gather valuable data on species presence and can capture information on species behavior and reproduction. Cameras can capture really interesting images like this with two juvenile mountain lions that were playing together. This is out at La Honda. And they can also capture images like this of a female mountain lion at Rancho San Antonio that's caring for 3 young kittens. And this is something we've seen at Rancho for a number of years now, 3 and even 4 kittens at a time being cared for by female mountain lions. So this is an image of the potential grid system of wildlife cameras that we're looking at for the Wildlife Photo Index at Rancho San Antonio. I want to point out that this is a preliminary map and the actual grid of cameras will probably be further apart. But as mentioned, we've managed wildlife cameras, including at Rancho, for many years, which can help to reinforce that those sightings and information from the public can confirm that mountain lions are present and provide some basic information that we can use during trapping events. Now, Midpen is looking at managing a more robust wildlife camera project at Rancho San Antonio. We're looking at having this in place for at least 1 to 2 years and possibly in perpetuity. And cameras will be placed and monitored strategically to collect more standardized information, not just that anecdotal info from our existing scattered cameras. This will collect information on a variety of species, not just mountain lions, and will help us to understand factors that influence lion movement or presence, as well as the influence of human activity on mountain lion movement. This can tell us a lot about the diversity of wildlife in the area, as well as distribution and relative abundance. And relative abundance means we may not know the exact number of deer, let's say, and the exact number of coyotes from this work, but we can say how many times we capture deer on the cameras versus how many times we capture coyotes, and see that there's a relative abundance there between those capture rates. The collaring study, which I'll mention next, will help us collect detailed information about where and when lions are moving. And the wildlife camera array study can help us tell what factors in the habitat might influence that movement. So these two studies will actually pair and inform each other. So if you tuned into the Coexisting with Cougars talk, we chatted about this photo quite a bit. And this was a really excellent photo taken by a preserve user, where we've got a really relaxed mountain lion sitting in the middle of the preserve trail in front of members of the public. So this is sort of anecdotal evidence that mountain lions are potentially habituating to people and becoming more used to being out in the open around them in areas where there's a high level of human activity. And this is not only just seen in Rancho San Antonio, we also see this in other locations like Pacifica, as well as the Almond and Quicksilver County Park. And what we're proposing is working with the UCSC Puma Project, as well as Cal Fish and Wildlife, to develop a research project that will let us better understand lion use at Rancho San Antonio and the surrounding preserves, to determine if lions are actually habituating to human activity. In addition, we're working to deploy that network of wildlife cameras that will let us understand the relative abundance of lions at Rancho. This information will culminate in a management plan that will lay out management strategies to reduce the likelihood of human and lion interactions in order to minimize any potential risk to the public and keep people and lions safe. These are some sources that were cited during the talk. Anybody wants to look into those? And with that, I'd like to thank you all again for your time. I hope this session was valuable for the board and to the members of the public, and helped shed some light on the work that Midpen does to preserve mountain lions so that future generations can enjoy the many ecological benefits that these iconic species have to offer.